Right now we're going to look at the notes for Unit 3, Notes F. We're going to get into some proportions and solving proportions. First, I'll start with the definition of proportion. A proportion is just two equal fractions. So if you go down here into the box, we have A over B is equal to C over D. If you take the inverse of both of those sides, or the reciprocal of both sides, so I switch the A and the B on the left, over here, you end up with B over A, and that's equal to C, the reciprocal of C over D, which is D over C. The other piece of information, and this is the one we're really going to use to solve these proportions, is that A over B is equal to C over D is the same as A times D being equal to B times C, which we commonly refer to as cross multiplication. So let's use that second property to solve this first example here. First, I'm going to do 5 times 4, and that's going to be equal to 3x plus 1 times 9. And when I do this 3x plus 1, I want to make sure that I'm multiplying 9 by both terms, so I'm definitely going to need the parentheses there. And when I go ahead and distribute that, my new equation is 20 is equal to 27x plus 9. From here, I would just solve this like we've solved a lot of those two-step algebra problems that we've been doing this entire unit. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides here. So I'm going to get 11 is equal to 27x. Then I divide both sides by 27. And that is my answer. I can't reduce that fraction 11 over 27 any better than that. So this is just going to be x is equal to 11/27. And that's basically it for solving proportions. Let's go to the next page. We're just going to look at a slightly different example here. So I'm at the top of the next page. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to cross multiply. So I'll do that 6 times 2x, which is going to give me 12x. And then on the other side, I'm going to do 5 times 4x minus 1. I'm going to go ahead and distribute there. So I'm going to get 20x minus 5 on the right-hand side. And then I'm going to subtract that 20x over. It doesn't really matter. That's probably the quickest way to get this one done, even though we end up with a negative x value. So when I do subtract 20x from both sides, I'm going to get negative 8x is equal to negative 5. So x is going to be equal to 5/8. Okay, so you notice both of these answers were fractions. That first one was kind of a nasty fraction, 11/27. But just make sure, you can go back, check your work to make sure that we did everything right. We did everything right. My fractions reduced. So we have our answers. All right, so let's try examples 1 through 4. What I'll do is we'll do one at a time. So go ahead, pause, try number 1, and then I'll show you the answer to that one. You can go ahead and hit play when you're finished with 1. So here's example number 1. I cross multiply, I get 25 is equal to 6 times the quantity 2x plus 1, which when we distribute, we get 12x plus 6. Subtract 6 from both sides, divide by 12, and 19 over 12 is as simple as it gets for that one. Let's move on over to example 2 here. I do have polynomials in both numerators, but we're going to do exactly the same things we have. So be careful on this one to make sure that when you cross multiply, when you multiply by the 8, you distribute the 8. When you multiply by the 3, you distribute the 3. So go ahead, try that one, and then you can unpause it and take a look at the answer. Okay, so take a look here. You're going to go ahead and do 8 times the quantity x minus 1. 3 equals 3 times the quantity 2 plus 5. You go ahead and distribute. And then I skipped over some of the algebraic steps, but I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. I'm going to add 8 to both sides. I end up with 23 over 2 as my answer. Let's move on to 3. Now 3 is a negative number in the numerator of that first fraction, but that's okay. We're just going to treat that, we're cross multiplying, so now I'm just going to have a negative 3 times a positive 2. And then from there, we're just going to work the problem like we would work any other algebraic problem after we cross multiply. So try number 3 and then unpause it to take a look at the answer. Okay, so I cross multiply, I get negative 6 is equal to 5 times the quantity 7x plus 1. Then a little bit of algebra here. I distribute, I subtract 5 from both sides. I get negative 11 is equal to 35x. So I get negative 11 35ths as my answer. Okay, let's move on to 4. And 4 has 3x squared minus 1 in the numerator. We're still going to distribute. And then we'll use some of those ideas that we use when we solve some of those nonlinear equations. So let's set this up. We'll go ahead and cross multiply and then see if we can figure out what x is equal to. We'll start this one by cross multiplying. So I do 2 times the quantity 3x squared minus 1, which on the left side will give me 6x squared minus 2. 5 times 8 is going to give me 40 on the right-hand side. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I get 6x squared is equal to 42. I divide both sides by 6. And now I get x squared is equal to 7. And as we saw before, we would just take the square root of x squared to give me x. And then I take the square root of 7, which clearly is not a perfect square. For right now, I think it's okay to just leave it as positive negative square root of 7. If you really wanted to put that in your calculator, I'm okay with that. But for right now, let's just leave it as positive negative square root of 7. Now, in the last page of the notes, we're going to kind of do a two-part thing here. You're going to cross multiply in order to solve for x, and then you're going to find out what x minus 8 is. Now, the second part here, this find x minus 8, we won't be able to do that until we actually know what x is. So we're going to save that blue box until the end. So if I cross multiply, I'm going to do 4 times 2x is going to give me 8x, 2 times the quantity x plus 3 for here, and then I'm going to get 8x is equal to 2x plus 6. Subtract 2x from both sides, I get 6x is equal to 6. And x is equal to 1 here. So that gives me my x value. Now I'm just going to take that and plug that into this part of the problem, which asks x minus 8. Well, now I know that my x value is 1, so 1 minus 8 is negative 7. So ultimately, this is what we were looking for. And these problems are similar to some of the SAT style problems that you'll see where you're going to have to use some algebraic skill to solve for x and then take that and substitute it into another polynomial. So it really is just checking a couple of different algebra skills. It's nothing brand new, just kind of combining two different things that we've seen before. So let's go ahead and try example number 2. You're going to go ahead and solve for x, then afterward find out what your answer would be when you do 2 minus 3x. So go ahead and pause it, and we'll take a look at the answer in a second. All right, so for this problem, when you cross multiply, if you take a look at my work, you're going to have to make sure that you do 3 times the quantity 2x plus 1. You'll get 6x plus 3. When I actually distribute all that, and I end up with x is equal to negative 3. Now, you want to be really careful here when you're plugging this x value back in. So I'm going to have 2 minus 3 times my x value. You'll notice in class I really like to use those parentheses when I substitute. This is a great time to use parentheses because if you just have that negative 3 floating around there, you might be thinking that you're subtracting 3 when actually we're multiplying by negative 3. So according to the order of operations, I'm going to do negative 3 times negative 3, which would give me a positive 9. And 2 plus that 9 is going to give me 11. So again, just a different way to look at some of the algebra skills that we've been talking about. So we have solving proportions using some algebra, and then taking that x value that we found and then plugging it in to a new polynomial and evaluating it at that point. So our homework today, the rest of the period, is going to be worksheet F, and I'll check that on Monday. Thanks for watching.